this meeting of the Schertz-Cibolo-Universal City Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present and that this meeting has been duly called and that the notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. The time is 6 o'clock. We will now take roll call. Please state here when I call your name. Mr. Perkins?
Key.
Mr. Finley?
Here.
Ms. Seaver?
Here.
Mr. Inman?
Here.
Mr. Pivito?
Here.
Mr. Westbrook?
Here.
And Ms. Drybeck, all seven.
Wow.
All 7 board members are present. On March 16th, Governor Greg Abbott granted a request by Attorney General Ken Paxton to temporarily suspend a limited number of open meetings laws to the extent necessary to allow telephone or video conference meetings in response to COVID-19. In accordance with those suspended rules, we certify the following. Notice of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. The meeting is being live streamed to the public. Administrative staff participating in the board meeting will be audible to the public via live stream video and some in present. Public comment statements from citizens who submitted their requests by 5 p.m. today, as outlined on the posted agenda notice, will be read during the public comment portion of the meeting. All other meeting procedures will adhere to board-adopted procedures to the extent practicable. An audio and video recording of this meeting is being made and will be made available to the public on the district's website at a later date. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
thank you for all those attending or listening online or listening at a later date. Here we are in June, still socially distancing as we sit here. Hopefully one day we'll be back in our regular area, but just want you to know, even though it's summertime and school may be out, business continues as usual, and many things are taking place behind the scenes getting ready for the next school year, from budgeting to planning to many things. And so also I just wanted to say we were excited to see, I drove by and saw kids out at Still as well as Clemens doing conditioning, strength and conditioning. I haven't driven by our junior highs, but I heard it's going on there too. So we're glad to have our kids back on some of our facilities and able to do things. So I'm excited about that. I hope those kids are enjoying being back in the hot sun, strength and conditioning. Next, we are going to go to public comments, which I have 3 to be read tonight. On the public comments, the Board of Trustees will hear those statements. In order to provide consistency and fairness to all individuals, public comments will be heard in accordance with Board Policy BED Local and procedures outlined in the Administrative Regulation BED. Public comments on general topics as well as specific agenda items listed on the posted agenda notice may be heard during the regular school board meeting. Public comments will be limited to those submitted by 5 p.m. today, as outlined on the posted agenda notice for this meeting. To ensure compliance with time limitations, the board secretary will alert the board president at 3 minutes. I will now read the public comment statements. Our first statement is from Alyssa Brett. And here is the statement. As a parent of 3 kids in the district in 3 different schools, I wanted to voice my concern with the new early start date and rising COVID cases. I do not feel comfortable with numbers increasing daily to new highs in our state to come August 13th, send all 3 of my kids back into the mix of big volume of numbers. We have limited ourselves to crowds since March 15th. Having an option available to parents who are able to either do full remote learning at home until numbers go down or they are comfortable is what I would like to see given. If full remote learning isn't an option, even staggering home days and school days to limit class sizes. I also want to know and see cleaning guidelines that will be implemented in each school as we enter the new school year. Thank you, Ms. Brett, for your comments. Our next public comment is by Carolina Carmichael. And the statement to be read. Parents want to ensure their children are receiving valuable education in a loving environment. As a mother of 2 Black children who are students within the district, I need to know what the district is planning to do to address racial inequities, implicit biases, and the need for culturally responsive instruction. In what ways is the district working to support teachers to become anti-racist? How has the topic of recognizing and addressing racism being incorporated into our students' curriculum? I understand these are hard to answer questions but demand further discussion. The email sent out a couple weeks ago by the superintendent noted meeting with teachers regarding these specific issues. However, we do not have the meeting minutes, nor were parents involved in these meetings. I would like to plan a meeting this summer with educators and parents to work together as a community to combat the issues of racial disparities within the education system and more specifically our district. Thank you, Ms. Carmichael, for your comments. And our last comment is by Jana Hagan, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced that last name. Statement to be read. My name is Jana Hagan. I'm a mom of 4 boys in this district, and they love their schools, band, and really miss their friends. I'm also a healthcare worker, a practicing respiratory therapist for 16 years. My career, I've worked exclusively with children in intensive care and outpatient settings, specializing in children with special medical needs. I'm acutely aware of infection control procedures and current concerns over COVID-19. I wanted to speak tonight to urge the board to think practically what is best not only for our children now, but for the future. This is not the first pandemic in history, but I assure you it is the first time ever people have been sitting around analyzing numbers and wondering if we should live our lives or not. Mental illness, anxiety, and depression are already at epidemic levels in our children. I fear continued isolation will be the final nail in the coffin. Life is much more than mere biologic existence. We need art, we need music, we need team sports, we need group activities, and all the rich experiences of working together to accomplish goals and learning to rely on each other regardless of the things that make us different. Public school provides that. It gives kids access to food and experiences they may not get at home. I propose actually living is far greater than merely being alive. That being said, here are some numbers I'll quote directly from an article on thehill.com. This is the quote. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, states that the first 68,998 U.S. deaths from COVID-19, only 12 have been children under age 14, less than 0.02%. Nor is coronavirus killing teenagers. At last count, the fatality of total among children under 18 without any underlying condition is 1. In addition, the article goes on to say, as is shown across the world, including Switzerland, Canada, the Netherlands, France, Iceland, the UK, Australia, and now Ireland, children seldom, if ever, transmit the disease to adults, even to their parents. I know I speak for many parents when I say, please open schools without restrictions. No masks, no social distancing, no plexiglass cubicles to isolate them from each other. Many children will get the virus, but they will recover and develop immunity, contributing to herd immunity our community needs. Finally, for families that have children that are medically fragile, I urge you to consider expanding your homebound program to protect the smallest percentage of children that could be at greater risk than the general population. Thank you for your time. And thank you, Jada Hagan, for your comments. That concludes our public comments. Next on the agenda is the superintendent's update. And we're going to start with our progress monitoring report on following district priorities. Priority 1, all graduates will be college and or career and are military ready, presented by Dr. Edwards.
Thank you, Ms. Strasbeck, Dr. Reed, members of the board. So we wanted to bring to you what we could on our Priority 1 update as of today. As you know, that in Priority 1 we have 3 goals, 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3. 1.1 focuses on college and career military readiness. 1.2 focuses on reading at the pre-K through 2 level, and 1.3 focuses on grades 3 through 10. What we do need to remind of is what we're going to be reporting on tonight is 1.1. It's really the only goal that we have data on with the cancellation of the STAR test, as well as some of our own internal reading diagnostic and assessments. We don't have the data to support or to provide in 1.2, 1.3. We plan on resuming those type of measures next year, our own internal measures that are a part of this, as well as any that are associated with state assessments as well. So going to 1.1, focusing on college and career military readiness. As a reminder, there are state criteria for establishing college, career, and military readiness, but we know in our district it goes beyond just state standards. So you can see here, we just wanted to remind the board on how we would qualify under college ready, the assessment instruments that we would use, the TSI, the Texas Success Initiative. Basically, that's the assessment that allows students to take college level courses, dual credit, on-ramps and some of those type courses. SAT assessment is an indicator of that, ACT, and then AP and IB. In the military realm for military readiness, we have enlistment is one criteria, ASVAB, and that's the battery of tests that determine qualifications for our students to be able to serve in the military, and that is a local criteria. It's not listed in the state criteria, but we believe if a student can make a 31 or better, he will be accepted into most branches of the military, indicating military readiness. Same way with the completion of the public service endorsement. That's basically 4 years of a coherent sequence of junior ROTC. Again, as a district, we've determined that if we have a student that goes through 4 years of our ROTC program, that they are military ready, and that's something that is near and dear to us. Also in the college ready realm, the completion of an endorsement and earn a certification. That's also a local criteria. Earn an industry-based certification. That's a state criteria, and those are somewhat limited. That's why you see that criteria above that. Graduate with a completed IEP and workforce readiness for our students that fall under that plan. And then SPED, graduate with foundation, distinguished plan, and those are the criteria. So when we look at our overall goal that we set for the 18 to 22 strategic plan, our end goal was 84% of our graduating seniors would demonstrate college, career, and or military readiness by June of 22. For the academic year, our goal was 82. As you know, we staggered those goals over that 4-year period. Our current results, and we're proud of this in spite of everything that was going on, is 81%. We're knocking on the door of meeting our goal for this year. And basically, to break that down even further, that means we're about 14 students short of meeting that 82% in spite of missing the last 10 weeks of school and some of the opportunities that go along with that. A point of pride is we were able to see an increase in CCMR, especially we saw a significant increase in our SPED population. And if you remember at the last couple of board meetings, we also discussed some of those innovative courses that's tied with CTE, and we believe that'll be another opportunity for our students to qualify for CCMR in our special education population. To break that down a little bit further, for the academic year, we mentioned that we're 14 students away. We still have some students that will be testing for certification over the summer. Just within the last few weeks, some of our Ready, Set, Teach students, TEA released some new criteria that we can use to allow those students to qualify for career readiness based upon the completion of that course and some other indicators, as well as we still have some students that are awaiting final verification of summer enlistment. So we do feel like we're knocking on the door of that. We feel good about it. We may end up reaching that 82% after all, again, in spite of everything that we've dealt with over the last 10 weeks. So COVID-19 considerations that impacted this to some degree. Again, we mentioned some opportunities for CTE certification, but we were limited. Some tests were canceled or delayed. We're still getting some communication and clarification on some alternatives that we can use for those students. We have some students that are coming in over the summer and being able to test with those industry-based certifications. So again, we're going to seek every opportunity we can to allow those students to achieve those certifications that they worked so hard for. Another impact on that was the cancellation of the spring ASVAB test. Some students will test over the summer with their recruitment officers. So whether they're enlisting or they're taking that ASVAB in the recruitment offices, again, we still have hope that some of our students will qualify under that, reaching that 82% goal. Some other things that factored into that was the cancellation of 2 spring SAT dates, as well as 1 spring ACT date, and those are the things that we really didn't have any control of, but we felt like contributed to some degree of not quite hitting 82%, yet. We're going to get there. We're real proud of the work of our teachers and our students. you know, especially, again, I keep saying this, in spite of what we were dealt with, we've made the best out of it. We continue to follow TEA guidance and look for opportunities for our students to qualify in those areas, and we're going to continue to do that, encourage our students and provide every opportunity we can for them to meet that criteria and for us to achieve that 1.1 goal for the 1920 school year. With that being said, usually we give, this is about a third of our presentation, but this is all of it tonight because we don't have data to report on 1.2 or 1.3. But again, we're very proud of what we've been able to accomplish in 3/4 of the year this year. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. And if I can't, Cassandra's on Zoom, and Ms. Gracia is the one that really kind of leads this work for us as far as tracking numbers, and she does a great job with that. We have a team that does that, but she's really our lead on that. So.
We don't get to count any summer, if they took it this summer for SAT or?
We will on some assessments. Like I said, the industry-based certifications, they're really, we haven't had any indication that there'll be any SAT, ACT.
I think it just got canceled this past Saturday.
Yeah. And we haven't had any indication that they'll reschedule those. The ASFAB is one, again, through their enlistment and recruiting services. So we may see some more on that, again, as well
They
as.
still let us count the toward.
Right.
How do we go back and find those students?
I'm sorry.
How do we go back and find those students? Like if they take the ASVAB, how do they come up on our radar?
We have that ability to track them through their enlistment, as well as receive some of those ASVAB scores. So you know, obviously we know some students that are seeking that, working through our counselors and things like that. So we'll monitor those as best we can. And again, 14 students, we think we can do it. We're going to get it.
Good evening, everybody. Cassandra. I just wanted to add in there that yes, we will be able to update up through the fall. It could be September. They may change that date. But yes, we can update based on what our students have done over the summer.
Because that affects our rating. Well, there won't be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Typically.
Some of those don't. The ASVAB one is a local criteria,
Right.
not a state criteria.
Right.
But the industry-based certifications and military enlistment could in fact affect our rating as well as the outcomes bonus that we would receive.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Next, and thank you, Ms. Gracia, as well. Next on our agenda is the 2020-2021, it's going to be a mouthful all year long, budgeting and staffing update presented by Dr. Ely, the timeline, and so forth.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. I just want a quick update on budgeting and staffing for next school year. We talked about having a compensation plan for your approval, as we do usually in June, for your consideration this evening. On Thursday, we were told that the commissioner would be announcing today more information regarding how schools will be funded next year, and that announcement was supposed to take place at 3 o'clock today. We did not feel that 3 hours, or actually 2 hours, was going to give us enough time to be able to adequately respond to that in making a recommendation to you, so we just went ahead and pulled it off. As it turns out, the Commissioner did meet with superintendents today at 3, but he pushed the conversation regarding what funding is going to look like to no later, he said today, no later than next Tuesday, which is fine because this will give us some time before the July meeting to bring back that compensation plan for your consideration. So we will find out more information perhaps Thursday, but no later, we're being told, than Tuesday. It is my feeling that one of the things that we will learn when the Commissioner speaks to us is that we will be funded on a slightly less per child basis for children who are educated in a remote environment versus those who are educated in a face-to-face environment. That is what we're hearing is going to happen. I don't know how much. I don't know any more information on that. Actually, I don't know any of that. That's just kind of the rumor du jour as to what's going to happen. And that is something that we will obviously be a planning consideration for us. Not only do we need to know what the difference will be, how does that work if students are remote for a certain part of the time and face-to-face for a certain part of the time, And then one of the things that we'll be doing is trying to determine what percentage of our students will be in those different ways based on the different options that are going to be available to us. So that's going to dominate a lot of our budget planning, our revenue forecasting over the next 6 weeks. So as I said, we'll have a lot more information on that within at least a week. By this time next week, we should have a lot more information on that. Tonight, for your consideration and hopeful approval, we have Dwayne Westerman from Samco Capital here to discuss negotiated sale parameters for some of our existing debt, which would go into a sale next month. That will help us impact our debt service payment and ultimately our interest and sinking tax rate. So that's something that we'll be doing tonight that is on our timeline. Our next scheduled budget workshop is Tuesday, July the 21st. At that one, we anticipate having updated revenue and expenditure projections for you. But right after that is when we are set to get certified values from the Guadalupe County and Bexar County appraisal districts. So we should have updated information on that at a regular meeting in July, which is Tuesday, July 28th. At that meeting, we should receive a report on the bond sale as well and have a lot more information regarding debt service at that time. And then again in August, we will have a special call meeting to approve the budget and set the tax rate. That date has not been set at this time. So that's kind of where we are with budget updates. If I have any questions on that before move on into a little bit of a COVID-19 update. Again, 2 weeks ago, we had a pretty lengthy budget workshop, so not much has changed as far as our projections since that time, but updates will be on the way by next month. Go ahead and go to item
Sure,
7
yes,
for COVID.
I'm sorry, I was just gonna let you go right into
All
it.
right, well, thank you very much. Give everybody on the board and the community just a little bit of update of where we are on COVID-19. I want to start and talk about our SCUCISD return to work plan. We moved into phase 2 of our return to work plan yesterday on the 15th of June. And I would like to say thanks to J.D. Mosley and his return to work committee that have been working on distilling a great deal of guidance from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, from the TEA, some of the rules that have ever been evolving. They're handed out in executive orders from the governor's office. And so moving through that changing landscape, those folks have done a great job of setting us up to be safe for our staff who are returning to work. And so in phase 2 of our return to work plan, we are having folks come who are working on full year, 12-month contracts are coming back into the office. We are reopening to one of the resolutions that we'll be acting in a little bit to end the resolutions that were enacted in March and April. Part of that work will be not only formally ending those resolutions that have already expired, but it will be setting us up back for business days. That means we will now be counting business days for anybody who has a public information request or is involved in a grievance, so that's part of that as well. As I was saying, thank yous to Mr. Mosley and his committee. I'd also like to thank folks, Mr. Rivera in purchasing, our maintenance staff, our custodial staff, for getting all the equipment that we need there for the installing plexiglass shields for those who work in closer contact with community members coming in. Think of our receptionists. So I appreciate their work in getting those things installed, getting the PPE available and necessary for us. I'll talk a little bit about PPE here in just a second, as well as the cleaning supplies. So thank you to all of those folks as well. TEA did announce last week that personal protective equipment will be disseminated to school districts on a per student basis in advance of next school year. And just so that everybody here is aware, we will be in receipt in the near future of a little over 141,000 disposable masks. As far as reusable masks, a little bit north of 35,000 is the number we're being given right now, but that number is tentative at this point. Over 53,000 pairs of gloves, 116 thermometers, about 1,450 gallons of hand sanitizer, and student face shields are yet to be determined. But we did find that information. That was, quite frankly, it was a surprise to us. We didn't know that that was in the offing, but we are thankful to be able to get some assistance from the state government for personal protective equipment needs. We have been purchasing and going through the purchasing process for other PPE as well to help not only our return to work for our staff when they come back in the fall, but what instruction might look like. So with that in mind, let's talk. Secondly, I'd like to visit about our graduation ceremonies, and thank you for everybody who was able to come to the military graduation ceremony that we had last Thursday at Schertz Veterans Memorial. Thanks to the city of Schertz for their willingness to host us and our community and our military graduates and their families. It was a really nice ceremony we've never done before. We are sorry that those 15 individuals will not be able to join us at the regular commencement exercises that will happen in a couple of weeks, but we are proud of them and their service to this country, either through their enlistment directly in the military or going to service academies. But thank you for those who were able to be there. And special thanks to Dr. Limley, who organized that and has been working very hard on the traditional commencement exercises that we'll have here in a couple of weeks, to our two high school principals who came together for that, to our ROTC leadership and students who were there, and special thanks to Master Sergeant Demetrius Owens, who gave the words of commissioning and welcoming to the students who graduated that night. So we appreciate him being and offering his unique perspective as a native of New York, who was on the Manhattan Bridge in September of 2001, and what that meant to him and what his service to the military means to him and to our students in our community. So thanks to those folks. As far as graduations in the traditional manner are going, as everybody knows, we will be graduating at Lynn Hoff Stadium for all three of our high schools. Allison Steele Enhanced Learning Center will be graduating on Thursday, June the 25th. Byron P. Steele, the second high school, will be graduating Monday, June the 29th, and Samuel Clemens High School will be Tuesday, June the 30th. So 29th and 30th for the two large comprehensive high schools. All of those, again, are at Lynn Hoff Stadium. We hope to have as great of weather for those three as we did for the military graduation. It's very nice out there. Speaking of weather, if there are weather complications and we can take a few plays off, so to speak, and ride out a minor storm, we might do that and continue. Should it be that type of storm that causes us to postpone the graduations, we are planning on keeping that stage set up and those chairs set up all the way through that next Saturday or Sunday. So we will go to the next available day where weather permitting, where we can go. Again, we will be going at 8:30 at night are the scheduled start times for us right now. Hopefully we will not have to change that, but that is our plan, is to hold off on that and get them in that window of time while we have the equipment there. In having this type of ceremony in the days of COVID, a lot of changes are having to be made. Know that every person who's there, whether it's a graduate, a staff member, a trustee, or a guest, is going to have to go through an attestation of being healthy enough to participate, meaning they don't have the symptoms that we are screening for. So we will be screening for that. We will be having our folks who come, our graduates, as I said, our staff, and our guests will have to sign an attestation that they do not have any of those symptoms that will be on the back of the ticket that will be provided them. Anybody who cannot attest to not having those symptoms will not be allowed to participate or to attend. So that is to make sure everybody is very much aware of that. We cannot have graduations inside, but we can have them outside. We can have them in family groups of up to a certain number of people, and each family group must be distanced by 6 feet between family groups. So we've gone through the process of getting additional seating for Lynn Hoff Stadium, bringing our traditional capacity, if we were to have a normal football game in a non-COVID type, to about 8,500 guests, visitors, attendees at a game. Obviously, we will not be able to do that with having to sit family groups 6 feet apart. We will be able to have about 576 to 580 groups of 4 If we went to groups of 5, we would have fewer groups than we have graduating students at both Steele and Clemens. So that's why it's limited to 4. That's why it's not 5. We're glad that we can allow 4 people to sit together from graduates' families. We realize this is not how we do it under a normal circumstance. We understand that going to Freeman Coliseum in the past, been able to bring a number of guests, as many as you've wanted to, but this is what we can do and still have everybody graduate together. I think if you think about it from the seniors' point of view, from the graduates' point of view, to be able to not graduate with only A through L, excuse me, or M through Z or some other type of arrangement, to be able to be all together on that football field is what they want, and we're glad that we're able to be able to do that. Just so that you know, we will have to stage our graduates inside the building, inside Samuel Clemens High School, so they will be inside, and they will be closer to 6 feet apart, so masks will be provided and required for our students who are inside involved in that staging, and then as we will march them across to the stadium as they process and are seated over there as well. So more information about specifics are coming from the high school principals, and they're communicating directly with the graduates and their families. I do want to say thanks to our graduates and their parents. Some of the graduates are represented by folks in this room and folks who are on this call. This has been unprecedented, gets overused. This has been a pain in the rear. I don't know if we've used that, but that's what it is. And this is not what we had envisioned. It's not what you had envisioned when you entered into your senior year. But you have overcome, you have persevered, and we are glad to be able to celebrate with you and with your families here in a couple weeks. So we look forward to that. And thank you for your patience. Thank you for your forbearance in working with us as we work with the state to be able to understand what we can do and provide for you. So I'm extremely glad that we can have an in-person graduation in the manner that we are. So it's a little bit about graduation ceremonies. Brief update on summer programming. As you know, we've got secondary summer school, which we've had in the past. In our first session, which is going on now, we have 197 students registered for 235 semester credits. And so those are going on right now. As of the last writing, we had 104 students registered for the second session. That number could go up. I guess it could go down if students get their stuff taken care of in the first session. Could go up, though, also as well. Don't know the number of semester credits just yet for the second summer session. This is our first foray into K through 5 summer learning camp. And so I'm very excited about that and those folks who are participating. We had 410 students sign up in grades rising K through 5th graders. And we have 31 teachers who are working with our kids right now in a remote environment for those students. President Dreisbach, you talked a little bit about driving around to our 2 comprehensive high schools and seeing summer strength and conditioning. Just to report, as we got started here, I guess it was a week ago. It was a little over a week ago on the 8th. We have over 900 SCUC ISD junior high and high school participants. That's up about 300. I'm thinking everybody is ready to get out, see their friends, work out, be outside. And so we're very excited that UIL, that the restrictions from the governor and the commissioner have allowed the UIL to be able to stand up summer strength and conditioning and sports-specific training. And this is our opportunity to do it right. Not only us in SCUC, but us across the state. If we show that we can get our kids back together, that we can respond in an appropriate manner, that we can handle being back together. And I think that bodes well for us as we transition to more activities, especially as you think about the 1st of August when other activities start coming back, UIL marching band and some of the other activities that happen at that time. So just a little bit of updating on summer programming. And last but not least, what is on most people's minds is what is school going to look like in the fall. We have a Models for School committee being chaired by Dr. Edwards and Kelly Kovacs. That have been working. We've met already 3 times. This is made up of district administrators, campus administrators, and a number of teachers who are giving up their time over the summer to put their heads together virtually in virtual chat rooms to really slog through some of the details associated with some of these different plans. Just as a reminder, we started looking at a number of plans. One would be traditional, or as close to what traditional schooling would look like. A hybrid plan, which would be where some of our kids are coming back in face-to-face instruction. Some of our kids are involved fully online, fully remotely. Blended would be if we have some restrictions on the numbers of kids that we can have in a building, either provided by the state or locally determined, where we kind of have some coming one time and some coming other and flipping. And then a transition to remote instruction when we might have to go into remote instruction for a little bit of time because of quarantine type situation, because somebody has tested positive for the virus. So we're working through all of those. These may not be the last 4 plans. They may be a little different as we move forward. One of the things that we are hearing is that not only is the commissioner supposed to either this Thursday or next Tuesday talk about how school funding will work, but he will be giving us a little bit more insight as to what the rules of the road will be, what the landscape will be as far as what we are allowed to do locally. Maybe what might be determined from the state perspective and what might be up to local discretion. He did drop a couple of hints this afternoon, so I do want to share them with you since he said this to us, that 75,600 minutes, which is what we have to have in our academic calendar for students. It's not days of instruction anymore, it's minutes of instruction. Whether we are educating students remotely or face-to-face, that we're going to have to do so for 75,600 minutes. So we don't exactly know what that looks like. We'll learn a lot more. And then he did say that districts will have flexibility on class sizes. So I am interested to understand what that means for us moving forward. Does that mean districts will determine how many can be in there, or are we going to get some guidance that we give permission to waive out of? I'm not sure. So we'll find that out and a lot more here in the next week or so. And what we'll do on that, as the information I talked about earlier with the finance impacts our budget and staffing, as I looked at our CFO, Mr. Pruski, what we learn about what our opportunities are will definitely, as I look at Dr. Edwards, impact teaching and learning and the work that we're doing there. And then we've got to meld those two together to see how that's going to work and see what budget implications, again, that's going to have for us and what practical implications that will have for us moving forward. So that is my 3 pages. So we'll talk for a little bit of time. I'd love to answer any questions you have about any of those particular items.
Has there been discussion regarding, I know you talked about 3 or 4 different models for coming back to school. A discussion regarding a teacher who has students in a classroom, but also has students assigned who are doing remote learning. Would that teacher be responsible for both groups of students, or would someone else be providing the instruction for those remote students?
So we have had discussions on that, and we have talked about both options. I think it makes a little bit of sense. It's like, well, if we take some of our teaching staff and they do face-to-face instruction, and we take some of our teaching staff and they do remote instruction, then that could be a pretty good use of our resources. One of the things that we're really thinking through is, if we do have the option, if we do provide the option like we're talking about in this scenario, for parents to choose, some parents may start off choosing the at-home model and realize that, things are okay, I want to go ahead and go to school. And some may be in school and say, I'm a little nervous about this, I want to go to a remote type of. There can be the potential for a lot of back and forth. Yeah. And trying to move them from one class to another, maybe even multiple times, and keeping a class size at a manageable number, either for the face-to-face or the remote, seems problematic. One of the things that we just don't know about either is what's the extent of the virus going to be in SCUCISD. We look at some of the larger counties, we look at Harris County, we look at Dallas County, we look at Travis and others, and We also look at Guadalupe County, which last time I saw, we've only had 171 confirmed cases in the entire county, 0 deaths, and we're at about 40 or so active cases. So to what extent does our situation look different from others? So those are things that we're trying to figure out from a budgeting point of view, and trying to figure out how many students would be in those different types of things. So that was a very long-winded answer, Mr. Pivotal. To know we have discussed a number of these different things, and we continue to. And as we get more information, we may think about a third or a fourth option. So all things right now kind of are on the table.
Thank you.
Do you want to say, I think some people don't realize probably in the past, we haven't been allowed to do remote other than a homebound.
Sure.
Because I think some people are confused, parents-wise, they think we just automatically can make that decision, so.
Yeah, so we, the way public education works and public school finance works, or has worked up until this point in history, I should say, is that for the most part, unless you're a virtual school, your instruction is provided in school, and you're funded on how many people are enrolled and how often they actually come to school. And so we didn't have this opportunity to have a lot of remote instruction like we're contemplating now. But with the changing needs based on the pandemic and what is ultimately going to probably be announced here within another week, the changing in funding and the attendance accounting handbook, we're going to have some opportunities to do some things that we have not been. Now, even the virtual schools that operate in the state, cannot ramp all the way up to take in a whole lot of people. So we've got to look at how we can serve those kids here that live in SCUCISD adequately. How can we serve them in a face-to-face role? How can we, for those we need to, in a remote role? And I can see a situation, especially if the virus is progressing as the way it is now, that we may have to move a classroom fully remote for a small period of time. I can see a situation. I don't know that that's how it's going to work, but we have to plan for that. And we have to plan that the virus doesn't spread and everybody's here. And we have to plan that if we have some sort of other restrictions that get added later. So, what did I say to y'all? I guess the 1st of May, unprecedented uncertainty requires unprecedented flexibility. So you may be watching at home right now and saying, Ely, I'd really like for you to tell me what it's going to be like. Or you may be watching this on the video, and I'd love to be able to tell us all what it's going to look like. But we are doing a really good job of considering a number of complicated variables and ensuring that whatever we put forward is going to keep the safety of our students and our staff foremost in mind, and yet get as many kids into a setting where they can learn at the very best, and they can bring all of those things to bear, like we're talking about a little earlier, art, music, social emotional health, those types of things. Those are I've talked about staffing and I've talked about funding, but those aren't the only considerations. The social emotional health and well-being of our kids and our staff are certainly things that we are working through with both our return to work and our models for instruction committees.
Has the MARAF and or the district attorneys talked about some sort of legal cover in case a child or a employee gets sick? Like, could they sue the district, or could they not, or is there some type of...
We have not talked about that per se, so no.
Thank you, Dr. Egan.
Thank you.
I just want to thank those that I know, some of those teachers that are off duty right now that are spending, I don't know what days y'all are doing it, but spending, you said 1 day a week, going through and helping, as you just hear a little tiny portion of what Dr. Ely's saying, of all the thoughts that have to go into next year. And we all wish we had a crystal ball and could say, especially the mom of a future senior in high school, would love to know what this year's going to look like, but none of us do. So, and I, you know, many friends in education, and I just want to applaud Dr. Ely and the whole team because I was on vacation and talked to another school district. I've already shared this with Dr. Ely, and they were very excited to hear we're doing this, and very sad to say that they have not planned one thing yet for if they have to go remote. They're just planning to be on site, and there's been nothing done. So I want to commend you for, man, forward thinking and, you know, getting us thinking about A, B, C, D, possibly E, F plans that we have to do. So
I appreciate that. They all do the work and just tell me what's going on, so I appreciate that.
well, I just, the whole group, I just appreciate, again, those teachers, whoever's on that team, so thank you so much. All right, we're going to move on to new business. Next on the agenda is, oh, yes.
I know we have Mr. Westerman here. Could we move on to that and get his thing, so he doesn't have to hang around all night? Or is that only a problem?
I don't have a problem with that. Are you okay with
It is your
that? That would move to,
We would be moving to item.
where is it? I'm sorry, I'm looking for it. There she is.
We're moving to item C2. Yes.
C2, yes.
7C.
Any objection to moving to C2? All right, so let's move to, and that is on page 86 for all those in the board book. So we're going to move on to an action item. We'll come back to new business for a request for board approval. Parameter order authorizing the issuance by the Schertz-Cibolo-Universal.
Go ahead and talk slower, because Mr. Frisky,
Oh,
he's
got
down
it.
the hall, so vamp a little bit.
We all know
Ready
that
for
I can talk, but I don't know about slow. So we're going to talk to Mr. Westerman about the unlimited tax refunding bonds and taxable series 2020.
I'll go ahead and introduce that a little bit,
Okay.
if that's all right.
Absolutely.
While Mr. Prisky goes and gets Mr. Westerman from down the hall. So as trustees, as you recall, we've talked a little bit about the part of our budget that concerns our debt service, our interest in sinking tax rate, and how the debt that we have that pays the principal and interest on the buildings that have been authorized by our voters is laid out for us. In the last couple of board workshops, we talked about possibilities of being able to restructure some of our debt to be able to provide some relief for some of the challenges that we have ahead of us for setting a tax rate here in the future. Just a reminder that we are statutorily capped at 50 cents per $100 of valuation for our interest in sinking tax rate. We have been for the last several years at 45 cents. We have some additional principal payments coming up this next year. It's going to necessitate us looking at our different options available. We talked about an option of increasing the tax rate, and that's something that we need to continue to have more conversation about whether we should do that or not moving forward. But what we have here for you to discuss this evening for your consideration and approval is a way to lower our payments here in the near term by restructuring our debt. And with that, as a very long-winded lead-in, we now have Mr. Dwayne Westerman from Samco Capital. Dwayne, sorry you didn't know we were jumping you up so early, so hopefully you get another hour of your evening back. We appreciate you being here from Samco Capital and talk a little bit about what we would be doing to restructure our debt and the parameters that we might, that you might leave here with board approval this evening. Mr. Westerman.
Thank you, Dr. Ely. President, members of the board, good to be with you again here this evening. We have a presentation before you. First part of it is a quick review, as Dr. Ely has mentioned, from our last visit. So we're looking at the challenges on the INS side for the tax rate situation. We've looked at several analyses, as we mentioned last time, and we've used some key assumptions, including a 0% for taxable valuation growth in 2020, growth in the next year at 2%, followed by the years after that at 3%, Tax collections calculated at 97%, and we're assuming no state assistance. And we assume that we're starting at August 31, 2020 with an INS fund balance of $2.9 million. Go to the next page. Again, a recap from last week. If we assume no growth in the taxable value, we're starting at $5,889,000,000. The debt service that is required in 2021 is $30,423,000. You see in the bullet points below that, if we use an INS tax rate of 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, and 50, you can see what the revenue comes in from that taxable value compared to the debt service payment as it currently stands and what the difference is. So we're obviously, the revenue is below what the debt service requirement is for the coming years, and we would have to draw down from the fund balance. And for all of them, until we get to the 49-cent tax rate, all of them would draw down all of the current projected INS fund balance and then some. It's not until we hit 49 cents that we'd have a small amount of $500,000 remaining in the INS fund. Some general rules of thumb to remember: each penny at the current level at the 97% collections brings in $571,000. Each percentage of collection up or down changes the revenue by $265,000, and each percentage increase in taxable valuation growth increases the revenue by $257,000. Next. Again, not going to spend a whole lot of time here. These are the outstanding issues of the district that we looked at, and we've looked at a variety of combinations to try to come up with the best solution to produce savings that would help us achieve some of the, or conquer some of the challenges ahead of us. And so if we go on to the next page. Last time when we talked, we were looking at the Series 2013 issue, which is callable in 2022. That hasn't changed. We're also, we're looking at that time, we had predominantly focused on the Series 2016 issue to pull out a couple of maturities to help us in the 2021 and the 2022 fiscal year. We've since had some more time to do a little more in-depth analysis, and it appears that we can use the 2018 series maybe instead of the 2016, and it's a little more advantageous to us. So we're continuing to look at those different variables to see what we can come up with to provide the best result. And in the future, beyond that, we have the Series 2014 issue in 2022 that we can refund in November of 21, and then the 2014A and the 2018 series will be callable in February of 2023, which we can get to in November of 2022. So by using these, we'll go on to the next page. Using the combination of those three things, we have some solutions that get us to conquering the INS challenge. And we can do it at 45, 46, 47, 48, or 49 cents. It is more advantageous and prepares us a little more if we can go above the 45 cents as it prepares us for the future. So what this table does, and I know the numbers are hard to read, hopefully you can read them a little bit. On the left-hand side is what our current debt service requirements are, and in 2021, again, it's $30,423,000. Then in the box, we show those three refundings we talked about looking at, and we show the savings that we're currently estimating from those three refundings. So for the one that we were proposing for you to consider tonight is an advance refunding, a taxable advance refunding that includes restructuring some of the debt service and really focuses all of the savings in the first 2 years, essentially. So it has savings of $4.7 million right now in 2021 and $4.8 million, almost $4.9 million in 2022. And that brings us down to the level of debt service that, in this case, that would manage us through the 45 cent. But you can see in the later years, the red numbers in that column it's pushed some of the debt service out to the later years, and that's where it hampers us in the future to some degree. We're still getting overall savings of the issue and last time when we talked, we were at like 871,000. Again, we used this 2018 and found some other different things to work there, and we've pushed that savings up total to a 2.4 million in savings. So that's a positive note, but we still have about $300,000 negative on some of those later years. Then in the future years, there's some smaller, it's a smaller refunding and some savings that we continue to monitor as we go forward and see how your values grow and see what happens with values and the tax rate in the future and how we want to do that. 2023 and 2027 are highlighted there because currently that's where your plans would indicate that we would be considering a bond election somewhere down the road. So we'd have to keep that in mind too as we continue to look at what we want to do going forward. So tonight, bringing this all into a conclusion is that the action item, the agenda item for you tonight is an order authorizing the issuance of advanced refunding bonds, unlimited tax refunding bonds of the district. And it's what we've done before. It's called a parameter order, and it has a maximum amount that we would issue. And in that, we've provided enough flexibility to use either the 2016 or the 2018. So the maximum amount would be 54 million. I don't think we'd end up refunding that much of the debt, but again, we're trying to leave the flexibility open as we watch the key parts of what we're trying to do. And we wouldn't refund and we wouldn't issue more than the amount that's being refunded, so we're not going to issue more debt. The maximum maturity is 2045, which is currently the longest maturity of the 2013 issue, so we're not extending the debt as far as years outgoing. And the maximum interest rate is 6%. That's kind of a plug number, obviously. We're going to be expecting a much lower interest rate than that. But we would have a minimum net present value savings of 3%. And currently on this issue, that present value savings is over 4% of the par amount of the issue. So what this order would do is with your approval tonight, would provide the flexibility for us to work with Dr. Ely and Mr. Pruski as we go through the coming weeks and looking at your budget and developing a plan and putting the combination together that would work to achieve the goals that you give us to shoot for.
Should we have a copy of an order, or we just want what's on the screen as far as the recommendation goes?
This, I have a copy of the order. I don't,
It's not in
It's just not in the packet.
it
the,
will,
it's not in our book.
okay.
There is a written order, though. So.
There is a written order. It follows the same format as we've done in the past. Happy, would you like to have a look real quick?
I just assumed there was something in writing. I didn't know if it was.
There is. I
Can
have
you
it.
execute that order, President? Secretary?
Madam President, I move that the Board of Trustees approve an order authorizing the issuance of the refunding bonds subject to a parameter or delegated sale and granting Samco Capital the authority to proceed.
Second. So we have a motion and a second. Discussion, questions?
If we go through all these refundings, the two in 2022, and say we were going to stay at 45 cents, is there any idea what our bond capacity would be in the 2023 timeframe?
Well, we're continuing to look through that right now. Your plan is looking at 166 million, appears to be what the needs would be in 2023. Initial looks at that, staying at the 45 cents, it gets difficult. It looks like we might be able to get, but it's going to have to go. No matter what we do, when you do the new bond issue, based on these current assumptions, there's going to have to be a tax rate increase with a new bond issue regardless. Depending upon how much that increase is, could depend on what we do in the year or two in between.
And the three, the one tonight, for approval, and then 2 in November of 2022 is the only 3 that we have outstanding that can be refunded between now and 2023.
That's correct. And then there is also additional issues that will be available or that will be coming up and callable in the years following that we'll look at, but that gets projecting out pretty far on refundings for those right now. But once we kind of have the direction from the board tonight, then we can continue working with Dr. Ely and Wayne and looking at what those future capacities, how that could be structured in.
So that's true. If we go forward with the board's approval and we go through the sale, we will know how much we were able to get. We'll know what the direct structure will look like. And then I think, and then Mr. Westman can go through and look at a number of different options, taking into consideration both 23 and 27, 2023 and 2027, as to, what that might look like for us. And we can do any number of scenarios we want to and play those out over the next several weeks.
What I was getting at is, based on that and based on 166 million in 2023, it looks like a tax rate increase is coming no matter how you want to slice this pie. And it might be easier to do it sooner rather than later, because if you do it sooner, then you can build up your INS fund balance and make it easier going forward. If we wait till later on, then it makes it, like I said, much more difficult to be able to get that. And then we're still looking at bonding out 30 years in the future, and we're going to be right back here again, without too far down the road, but we'll have to do it anyway. So it's kind of like the old cliche, pay me now or pay me later. If you want these facilities, is it better to do it later, or is it better to do it now and make it a little bit easier on future boards to be able to make that decision? So I think that's something that needs to be thought about. Nobody likes tax increases, but if we're going to provide the facilities, that may be something we need to look at and really think about. So I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, part of the issue is it's not likely, or some folks might say not bloody likely, that the state's going to jump back into the facilities allotment anytime soon, for sure.
It's up to us.
Which, again, that's,
I don't like any better than anybody else, but sometimes sooner is better than later.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's the value of the dollar is what it's all about. So
I'm just saying that as a discussion for everybody, because it looks like that's coming one way or another anyway.
And I would agree with you. I hate to have to say that part of it. We've held on to that 45 cents for a number of years. Even had a year where we decreased it 2 cents a couple of years ago, and that trying to be thoughtful of the taxpayers in that path. If we redo the refunding so that maybe we're only looking at the 46-cent rate or a 47-cent rate, then that savings in this issue that we're talking about right now would be higher in those years later on where it's negative. Those get less and less, and so that's where it helps you in the future as well with the capacity for consideration. I mean, we can do what you want, but I think it's a
You get a savings effect.
yeah.
Which is, the sooner you do it, the more savings you get down the road. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, we've had a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Westerman, for coming in, and thank you, Mr. Pivito, for considering moving that up.
Thank you.
Yes. I don't know that I forgot, but when you're out of sight, out of mind, I used to see you sitting in the audience, but now I don't see you until we get to you on the agenda, so. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Signature on 7A1.
Yes, so we are going to start back in new business on A1, back on page 12 in our board agenda. And the first one on there is a report on school year 2020-2021 budget development process, property values, and state funding discussion. First requirement presented by Mr. Pruski.
Yes, good evening, President Dresbach, Dr. Ely, members of the board. Tonight, before you is a report discussion item regarding a requirement, not only for knowledge, but for our financial integrity rating systems in Texas requirement regarding the board and discussion of property values. Tonight is a kind of a high-level review of this information, and any questions we can answer as well as we go through this. This TEA indicator, as mentioned, for the first began in 2019, and basically is, did the school board members discuss the district's property values and the funding lag at a board meeting within 120 days of adopting its budget? If the school district fails this indicator, meaning if we didn't have this discussion, the maximum points and the highest rating the school district would receive would be an 89. And that would equal a B, which is above standard. Currently, we shoot for higher than that. Regarding this, some of the changes that have occurred, as you are well aware, House Bill 3, one of the most significant changes in House Bill 3, involved moving to current year property values. So for the calculation of state aid. With the legislators switching to those current year property values, this would eliminate what's known as formula lag, meaning using prior values. This also ensures funding based on student need and not property wealth, and then allowed a higher basic allotment. As you know, they moved the basic allotment, they increased it for the funding for majority of the districts. But school districts, we used to know what our state aid would be because we would look at the prior year certified values, and you knew what the state was going to provide for the most part. Now, school districts have to determine a best approximation, thus leading to some uncertainty of state aid expected for the budget year, going to current property values. Property values, as a reminder, preliminary property values are to be available no later than April 30, and SCUC did receive those, and you can see those amounts there. Bear, $759,624,000 and some change. Guadalupe County, over $5.1 billion, totaling close, just under $6 billion, so $5.9 billion in preliminary values. At the bottom, you'll see a rate of how the district has, this is from certified, so from 16-17, you can see the increase there of 8.92%, 17-18 at 5.43, 18-19 5.4, and 19-20 5.47. And then this is a preliminary number. Applying that same metric, it would look to be a 7.62% increase. These are off of preliminary values. In blue is certified. So there's some movement that could still and probably will happen. As a reminder, our certified values are to be available, as mentioned by Dr. Ely earlier, a few days after our July 21st budget workshop. Okay, so this chart is a little difficult to see up there, so I wanted to pass this out real quick if we could. Let's do it around that way. Thank you, sir. What you'll have here as these are going around, thank you for passing those, is you'll see the county, and in blue again, this is certified, and in the beige is preliminary. So as you go across, you'll see starting from 2016, 2017, 2017, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, and then 2021 in the preliminary statute there. So going through there, I want to draw your attention. You have Guadalupe and Bear, and then a total, and then the percent changes as mentioned before. But if you look about in the middle there, the circled areas that I have up on the screen, you can see the totals for those years. So 2016, certified value of 4.6, 2017, 4.9, and then you can see the numbers there as we go across. The percent changes as mentioned before. Again, the ones in blue, the certified, those were the factuals, and the one in beige, those are your preliminaries. So the funding mechanism, you can see there in yellow circle. So starting in using 2017 as a baseline, 2017 used prior year, or the previous year total, of the 4.6 from 2016. So we kind of knew that moving forward. You follow it to the next year, 2018, the same thing. We used the prior year, the 4.9. Then House Bill 3, we skipped the certified values of 5.2 for 2018 and went to the current values of 5.4. In essence, the district went from the 4.9 in 2017 to the 5.4 for the 2019. So the underline in red was never even used. So now you have the current year. So that's the methodology of the discussion for today. Prior years to current years. And then, so again, what happened there? Oh, the schedule, I'm sorry. I thought I lost the page. So I'll stop there real quick if there's any questions onto that page. Okay. So moving on then, just as information on the schedule, then again, preliminary values were delivered. Certified are to be made available July 25th. TEA will be doing a tax data collection survey starting July 18th through August 1st. As a reminder, TEA will be setting our maximum compressed tax rate, our MCR. So they'll take the information in and then they will assign it no later than August 5th. So our tax rate will be known no later than August 5th. There's a short period if a district wishes to appeal, and there's an appeal process, but then as you know, as we're getting tight there for budget, we need to publish the notice of the public meeting no later than August 21st. So it's kind of a race to the finish there in August with TEA assigning that MCR. And if there's any questions.
Just as far as the M&O tax rate goes, it was 97 cents for this current year. Our projections based on the state compressed rate would be 95.64 cents for next year. With the one additional penny on M&O would be 96.64, which is slightly less than 97 cents. That's the highest it could be. It could be compressed more if TEA determines that our property value increase is greater than 4.01%. That's the state rate that they're using. So we won't know that, and because they'll be collecting that data between July 18th and August 1st. And as Mr. Prisky said, that will be given to us, and that will be a part of it, and that will be what we must pay as local taxpayers, and then the state share foundation school program and available school fund will be adjusted based on that number.
Yeah, so let me ask, so this 5.9, is that billion?
Yes, sir.
So that's the number we got sometime in April. That's the preliminary
Yes, sir.
taxable value of all the properties, right? And according to this chart, you're saying that's an increase of 7.6% from last year.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And I assume every year there's, people debate or whatever you want to call it, protest their taxable value, so it may go down a little bit. So from what I've been hearing, the entire discussion we've been having the last 2 months is that our taxable values will not increase.
So I appreciate it.
We're going to finally figure out the actual true number here before we do the budget and
Yes,
sign
sir.
off. So
We will.
we'll know what the actual number is.
Yes, sir.
So I'm perfectly okay with conservative budgeting, but how does all this play out?
So how does this play out? So when you get your preliminary values from the appraisal districts, that's obviously prior to any protests, as you pointed out. And most of the times appraisal districts will give you kind of a confidence interval. They say, not plus, but maybe minus 4 percentage points or 3 percentage points, or we have historical facts to go look in between. Here's where we were at preliminary and here's where we were at certified. It dropped 5% or something like that. We can look at that. This is a weird year because we don't know what they're going to do. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Pruski, but the number you were given was as much as a gain of 7.2% or as little as, or as much of a loss as 2%. So he gave us between 7% growth and 2% loss. And so being conservative in our approach to budgeting, we started with a no property value increase. So what you will see when we come to you in July is you're going to see some sort of a property value increase in there. And then we're not going to go all the way to 7 because we know it won't be that. We don't know if it's going to be 4 or 2.5 or 1.75. We have no idea what it's going to be. You'll see something in there, and then by the time we get into August, we'll know exactly what it'll be.
And all the numbers to the left, those are the actual values after the protests.
Yes.
That's historically what it meant.
Yes.
Any other questions? Wayne, thank you for this chart. This is great. I knew that we had, we switched it over, but to see, I'm a visual learner, so to see it, how we really kind of skipped a year on all of that. And this just goes back to reinforce how complicated school finance system definitely can be, speaking of compressed and all of that. So thank you for that. Next on the agenda is a report, new business construction update for the month of June, presented by Mr. Mosley. I haven't heard that voice in a while.
Sir? How are you?
Is he there? I can do it. We're prepared either way.
Mr. Mosley, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, he's ready.
Well, I can't see the presentation.
So why don't you say nice things about President Dreisbach or the board for about another 15 seconds.
Mr. Mosley, it's nice to hear your voice. I haven't seen you in a while, so.
Well, I look forward to at some point being in the room with everyone and seeing everyone in person. So.
Excellent. Very good
Us
vamping.
too.
Very good vamping. We have your presentation up now with the first slide. Just tell us when to turn.
So good evening, President Dreisbach, Dr. Readiness, and members of the board. I do have a short construction update for you this evening. And so just looking at bond 2016, as of right now, we have wrapping up our technology portion of bond 2016, and we have our bond savings projects that the board has previously approved. So we'll go to slide 2. We'll talk about the technology. And so the technology project, as a reminder, we are in our 3rd phase of our panel replacement at our campuses. Right now we are doing a replacement at Clemens, and we are doing replacement at Wilder and Jordan. The project was planned to kick off in June. We did get an early start on this project due to the circumstances we are in, so we're doing very well with the project. The project's coming out well. The next slide shows us a couple of pictures, just a progression on kind of how this looks as we're building these out. And so just going kind of from left to right, we just kind of show the rough end, we get our mounts up there, and then on the right hand side, you see our panel replacement up there between our 2 whiteboards. If you go on to the next slide, just kind of a short discussion of our bond savings projects that we have ongoing currently. The HVAC replacement project, which is at Green Valley, Mavish West, which is where y'all are sitting this evening, and Clemens Kitchen. Currently, we are working on the Green Valley and Clemens Kitchen portions of the project. Again, we did get an early start on these. Schedule-wise, we're doing well on both of these projects. A lot of work has already been completed. Our equipment for these projects is on time. So we're looking for a substantial completion as planned on A3. And then the Malish project would kick off construction in late September. Our plan as of right now is to have our board meeting in September in the boardroom, and then we would move our October, November, and December board meetings to another location. Currently, we are looking
looking at possibly using Adobe Library as our alternate location for board meeting in those 3 months. So we're in planning phase for that part of the project. The Emmitsburg jet roof, we did our walkthrough last Friday, and we are currently just doing some punch items, getting cleanup done. Hopefully we'll see the flags off of that roof maybe by the end of next week, and we won't have any other construction going on that you'll be able to see on the road as you drive by. The last one on the savings projects is our emergency generators. And so we've got Watts, Waller, Jordan, and Marion Dolphin all receiving emergency generators. Just as a reminder, these generators are for emergency power to these campuses. So we're looking at emergency lighting, making sure our coolers and freezers continue to run so we don't lose food, having our phones work during the power outage, as well as some emergency plugs in our nursing areas, etc. So if you're going to the next slide, there's some pictures of some of this. So the first slide is our HVAC replacements. We know these are not exciting slides, but this is the project slide. This is replacing HVAC equipment. So it doesn't look exciting, but it feels really good when it works. So these are just kind of going around and taking a look at some of the different things that are happening for that project. If we move on to slide 6, this is just a picture of the construction, the flatwork pads where the generators will be placed. We're expecting delivery of the generators possibly as early as next week. And so our pads are ready, so when we get here, we'll be able to place them on those concrete pads. Last slide for the evening. This is my favorite slide. So it's our 2013 bond savings project. This is the Adobe Junior High courtyard. You just kind of see by the picture that it'd be driven by Adobe. We think this is an awesome addition to Adobe. This is going to really help the lunchtime atmosphere at a junior high in the campus that has a lunchroom in the middle of the campus. So I know the campus admin is very excited about this area of being able to let some of our kids come out here and have lunch, get some fresh air during their lunch period, and relieve some of the students that are inside the building. So this is very similar to the courtyard area Corbett has as well. Corbett has a space similar to this where the kids can get outside. So this is our best picture of the evening. So I will stop there with the first report and answer questions that anybody may have.
Looks good. Looks great. JD, so you're telling me about the time we're going to go back into the boardroom, we're going to leave the boardroom for our air conditioning, is what you're telling us.
Yes, ma'am. That sounds likely. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, well, we know it's been planned for a while. We just had a little bit of interruption with COVID being in there, so that's great.
Yes.
Thank you, JD. Any
Thank you,
other
Ms. Wilson.
questions?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. All right, our next new business item is discussion on the procurement of goods and services presented by Mr. Rivera, two RFPs for school bus GPS tracking system and contracted extracurricular charter bus services.
Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Healy. I don't have any really nice pictures like that Adobe photo, but we do have an exciting GPS tracking system. This is very valuable, something that we have on 114 buses currently. However, the technology that we had is becoming obsolete and needs to be replaced after this year. For any follow-up questions on that, Mr. Brett stands ready. As far as the extracurricular charter bus services, this is something that we've used annually. Our current 5-year contract is expiring, and we're going back on the street. We should bring both of these back in July. Both of these RFPs close on June 30th.
Any questions? GPS tracking, charter buses, we're good? Okay, thank you, Mr. Rivera. Next on our new business discussion item is a report of the 2020-2021 school year health insurance proposed changes presented by Ms. Cannon.
She's on her way in.
Yes.
Just as a reminder, when we're changing people out, we're wiping down with Clorox wipes. So.
Not everybody probably sees that at home. That's why there's a little bit of lag, because we are disinfecting and cleaning as we change out.
Can you do windows, Mr. Pruski?
Oh, you got Dr. Neely on that one. That was good, Mr. Cooper.
I'm looking. Oh, I think it's supposed to be good.
Welcome, Mrs. Cannon.
Yes.
Just pick one. It'll come. There you go.
Got it.
Thanks, Steve.
Ready? Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right, so tonight we wanted to share with you some information on our health insurance plans for next year. We've been working the last few months to kind of review our data, working with Gallagher and also working with United Healthcare to really look at what we can do for our employees for this next school year. So we actually, the assumptions that we went off of for this next school year to project our premiums for the upcoming year, we looked at our claim rates. Now that we've been self-funded for a while, we actually can do a full year's worth of claim rates to look at, you know, where they fell. So we looked at those from April of last year to March of this year. We also looked at the trend in our medicals and our pharmaceuticals. So medical, it went up about 5.8% over that year's time, and our pharmaceutical went up 8.1%. Typically, your pharmacies are going up at a higher rate than your medical is. They looked at anticipated rebates that we get, so we do get some rebates back from the pharmaceutical companies for the pharmacy costs that we incur throughout the year, and these come in quarterly. And so based on what they saw this year, they're anticipating next year we'd get about $520,000 back in rebates. They also looked at United Healthcare's fees to administer our self-fund. This is on we pay per individual on this, and it's a fixed cost. And they lowered that just a little bit for us, but as I say, every little bit helps. So it's gone from $40 to about $39. And then looking at our stop loss premiums, this is also a fixed cost, and it went up, and it went up at a lower rate than what we saw a year ago. So we're going to see a 13.2% increase in the individual at the stop loss rate. A year ago, we saw an increase of 31%. So we felt like that was a pretty good rate to go with this next year. The aggregate went down 1 percentage point from what we saw last year. We also, the way that we bid our plan this 3 years ago with United Healthcare is that they reimburse us for $30,000 in wellness fees or funds. And so what we do is we request those about this time of the year, and it helps us reimburse those rally dollars that we get for our employees that they do different things and they get a gift card, and we pay that out initially, and that $30,000 just goes back into our fund for that. So overall, when you look at those assumptions, we would need about 3.1% more in premiums this next school year than what we had last year. So the premiums that came in last year, we need about that 3.1%. And that equates to about $200,000. So then we looked at, well, what could we do if we don't raise the premiums? You know, is there other ways that we could maybe look at some savings for the plan overall? And so we asked them about a plan that had maybe a more limited network than what we currently offer, and then also potentially had a lower deductible. And United Healthcare has what's called a Nexus Accountable Care Organization, and we call that an ACO. And so we let them bid out for that to just see what that might look like for us. And if an employee were to take look at the ACO plan, they would either have to use one of the WellMed facilities that are around here, which we have one really close to our office here, or they would have to look at using a premier designated provider. And United Healthcare actually identifies those. They look at quality of care for the physicians or the service provider, and they look at the cost that they're charging. And if those two kind of mesh up as providing good service and at a lower cost to people that are using their services, then they designate them a premier designated provider. And you want to do that because you're actually going to try to save the plan by having them go to a quality physician at a lower rate. And then if they use this plan, then they would have to only use the Methodist facilities if they go to have hospital services. So, which we have plenty of those in the area as well. Right now, our other plans are pretty open. They have a pretty wide network as far as physicians, and they have a very wide network as far as hospital facilities. This plan would be structured in a PPO structure, so that means that it would be a copay plan, and if they stayed with the network, the plan would pay at 80%, and if they went outside of a network, it would pay at 60%. And of course, then it's also the lower deductible. And so we went ahead and said, well, you know what if we just offered our plans A, B, and D as we offered this year, and didn't raise the premiums for those, and then offered the ACO plan and tried to encourage some of our folks to go to a more limited network and potentially help us save on claims. And so this is real tiny print, so I gave you a copy of it. But you'll look at this, and basically if you look at that first column, that's actually bid out for the ACO plan, and really what you see there is a $2,000 deductible, and if you look at the cost per month for the plan, it's actually $9 cheaper than our lowest cost plan currently. So we felt like it might be a good way to encourage folks to go to a plan that might help us save in claim dollars, but still provide them good service as far as their physicians and their hospital networks that they have access to. And so this next year, we would like to not raise our premiums and look at offering this ACO plan. And if we have enough folks that might migrate to that ACO plan, we might be able to come out pretty even on those dollars. Instead of it being a 3.1% increase needed for the plan, we could potentially come out even, or maybe even a little less, hopefully, and put some away for savings. If we don't raise premiums, we still have plenty of money in the fund. We have not tapped into any of the money that the board designated to us a couple of years ago. And we, over the last couple of years, have saved about $450,000 to the plan. So we have plenty of money if we don't raise premiums and offer this ACO plan to our staff.
So,
Questions?
so
Yes.
just make sure I understand and the board understands. So not only are we recommending not raising premiums for our employees and their beneficiaries who participate, we're not raising any co-pays, we're not raising any deductibles either. None of that changes, not any office visits. It's the same as this year.
Yes, if they want to stay on plan A, B, or D, they can stay on plan A, B, or D at the same cost that they had for this current year, and none of the plans changed.
Plus, we're offering another plan.
Plus, we're offering another plan that is, while more limited in scope, it is more affordable. And it has a lower deductible than any of our other plans.
And I'd say that was probably the biggest feedback we get is the deductible.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't meet their deductible, but it just is a scary number sitting out there in case something does happen. So we felt like if we could offer some type of a plan that looked you know, attractive to our staff members with that lower deductible. I think some of our folks would say we're not concerned with the limited network. We just are more scared about that deductible.
So when does this option go out to them? This would be in the next couple months?
Yes, we actually are starting to look at right now trying to print booklets, so we would want to get this in the booklet. We'll probably get that out to them around the first part of July, and then we'll start open enrollment into July and into August timeframe. We would want to, if people select, if our employees select that ACO plan, my thought is we need to follow up with them to have them understand what they're signing up for, with a document that says, well, you know, just to let you know, this is a limited network. You have to use a Methodist hospital. You have to use a premier designated physician, and really educate them and communicate that out, because we don't want them to just look at that deductible or that, you know, $9 less and say, I'm just going to use that, and then they run into a problem a month from now.
Right.
So you get $30,000 in wellness, that's just sort of like preventive incentive type stuff that.
It is. United Healthcare has what's called a rally program, and they have opportunities throughout the year to participate in different wellness opportunities. And if they do that, when it comes through the system, they're able to earn gift cards back, and they get to choose where their gift cards go to. So we offer biometric screenings that come in usually around October, November, and they automatically, if they do that biometric screening, it gives them a $75 gift card for participating. But it also gives them results back on things that they, you know, may or may not know about their lab results and their health. So it's really to help prevent things, but it's also to also incentivize it.
How many people take advantage of that?
Quite a few. That $30,000 is eat up beyond.
HIPAA, sir. HIPAA.
Yeah, it's kind of nice getting those, especially around December timeframe. You can go in and actually use them as gifts if you would like.
That's good. Well, I'm happy to see that the program is, you know, is working the way it was designed, because I know there was a big discussion 2 or 3 years back, and there was some concern what happens if we have a good year or a bad year. So what are the sort of the major health issues that could be addressed? Like most of the insurance, what are we dealing with? Is it mostly health, trauma, family related, pregnancies, or?
No, I think mostly the things that we did look at that needs to probably comes back in our data is probably diabetes, you know, heart issues. Probably those are the top two. Stress is a big one these days. That people are really, you know, having the mental health is a real issue for our staff members.
You mean the people teaching SEL have problem dealing with SEL? Okay. All right. Just
So that's probably the top three that reflects in our data.
thank you.
And Linda, just to reiterate what you said, we did not go over our threshold. I know we had that stop loss insurance if we go over that, but we did not reach that this year.
We did not. We are still sitting
And
pretty
you
on
said
that.
we've been able to even put some back that's gonna allow us not to raise those premiums. So I just, you know, encourage those employees to continually, I know y'all have encouraged them to shop around, because it does affect how much, and so we want to continue that so we can keep this as least amount as possible. So, any other questions? All right, thank you, Ms. Cannon. We appreciate that report on our school health insurance for next year. The next discussion item is the Families First Coronavirus Relief Act and Emergency Family Medical Leave Act, presented by Ms. Cannon.
This is another area we're learning more and more about. On April 1st of 2020, they came out with, the federal government came out with a Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And what that is to provide leave available to employees for COVID-related reasons. It's a temporary leave act, so it's really to address the current emergency situation that we're in. And it only is for a short time, so it's supposed to, it will sunset in on December 31st of 2020. But it does allow us to administer leave to our employees, especially as we start to reopen the workforce. Because it's a short-term situation as far as leave being available, TASB has recommended that we don't change board policy for such a short part of time. But they did suggest that we make sure the board's been updated on it, knows that it's available, and that we put administrative processes in place to administer the leave. So with that, there's 2 umbrellas of leave available to our staff members, and one is called the emergency paid sick leave. And this will provide 2 weeks of paid sick leave at the regular rate of pay for an employee due to any of the following reasons. So if they've been told to quarantine or isolate, or if they've been recommended to self-quarantine, or if they're experiencing symptoms and they're seeking medical diagnosis, then they have leave of 2 weeks available to them at the regular rate of their pay. So they wouldn't have to use their current leave. We would just pay them for being out for those 2 weeks. And so this is just to help with the situation at hand, to make sure nobody is really struggling with costs and things, as they may not be able to work these next if they were to become sick. Another part of that was they will also provide 2 weeks of paid sick leave at 2/3 the employee's rate of pay if they are caring for somebody who is subject to the quarantine or isolation or self-quarantine, or their daycare has been closed down, or their school has been closed down and they're having to work, or the last one is a substantially similar condition, but this is something the health department will say they qualify for. It's not something that we're going to say, oh, that's similar to COVID, so we're going to give you this leave. They will actually come in with that documentation that says that. And then another type of leave this is an expanded family medical leave, and it pays up to 10 weeks for an employee at 2/3 their pay, as long as they've been employed with us for 30 days and their child care provider or the school is closed. So you can see here we've got some leave that we may have to track, and we may have to really make sure we identify who is qualifying for this leave. So what have we done? In HR, we've developed a pretty hefty process with some flow charts to walk ourselves through qualifying a person for this type of leave. We have had to work with our payroll department as well, because if they qualify and we have to pay them at their full rate or pay them at 2/3 of the price, then we need to work with our payroll department on making sure that they get paid that out. We've communicated it through our return to work plan, and we are building a COVID-19 resources website on the HR website, because we have lots of information there that some of it we're required to post, and then some of it that we felt like is good resources for our staff members to know about. We have leave forms, and we're actually going to be using the TASB's model leave forms that they've developed for us, as far as having employees fill those leave forms out, and then we're going to assist them in walking them through the qualification process, and then also making sure that they get the access they need to that leave. Any questions on that?
So if a teacher comes down with COVID-related symptoms, she's cleared she goes to her own healthcare provider, she gets a test, it's positive, so she's out for 2 weeks, and then you backfill with a substitute, or how's that going to happen with a substitute?
Yes, if it's in a position where there's a substitute needed and that person qualifies for the leave, then we're going to work through the process. We look at the physician's notices and all of that information, and we make sure, yes, you're going to stay home, they'll get a sub for 2 weeks, so it won't be we won't be charging the employee for their leave if they qualify. That's going to be a cost we may incur.
So there's 2 things. What you're talking about is, yes, they go, they're quarantined, they're home, we will backfill with a sub. And then now, what we're the subject of tonight's presentation is how much do we have to, what makes them qualify for us covering their leave, and how we code that, and those types of things.
So is that something we've said, or the state has said, that if a teacher is sick
or a student is sick that you need to stay home for 2 weeks. Like, you can't come back before that.
We are working in the development of both our return to work plan and the development of our models for instruction for next year, to determine exactly what those are going to be when students come back. And that has been pretty much solid, that 14 days of quarantine. I don't know that that's going to change, but we're going to make sure we update our plans to represent the guidance that we're given both from the governor and the commissioner as we move forward.
And the pay is, will that also affect one of your executive leadership teams or just teachers?
Everybody can qualify for this.
Everybody
Anybody and everybody can qualify for this. One thing I did fail to mention is that on the, we currently give or allow employees 12 weeks in a rolling calendar year of FMLA leave. This runs concurrently with that, so they don't get 12 additional weeks for this. So if they've already been out for 8 weeks for maternity leave, and then something were to occur and they qualify for this, then they would only be eligible then for the additional 4 weeks.
It's important to understand that none of these existed 2 months ago. So if you woke up this morning thinking you're glad you didn't work in HR, you definitely, if you didn't think that this morning, you certainly do now. I just want to say thank you to Mrs. Ken and her staff for navigating these. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but it's really important because it's really important for our folks. Because you see, it's not only for our employees, but some of this for our employees and those that they care for. And so we appreciate the ability to be able to do that. It's granted by the federal government, and we appreciate y'all's work for making that happen. And so we have trained and talked with our supervisors, Team 1, principals and directors, and they are, and if any of them have any of their employees who are in this situation, they immediately contact HR, and our HR professionals work them through the many difficult hoops that we have to go through in these particular areas. So thank you.
Just one HR question, how do you backfill a nurse if a nurse comes down with symptoms?
We have a few sub-nurses, but typically we have to really, David Dean gets involved and we kind of look at where our biggest needs are and see if we can't find coverage for that campus.
Thank you, Ms. Ken. Appreciate that. Our next discussion item is hazardous bus routing resolution presented by Mr. Perez.
Good evening, Madam President, Vice Back, Dr. Ely, members of the board. This is a yearly update of the hazardous bus routing resolution. We have it as a discussion item for this month, then we'll bring it back hopefully as an action item in July. The item contains an updated list of routes without major changes to the areas and conditions. Compliance with the policy ensures that we receive proper state funding as well as consistency with our service offerings. At this point, we're anticipating to receive approximately $60,000 in reimbursement from the state for hazardous bus routing for the 1920 school year. And this item will come back again to action.
Sir, what did you say at the end? Action item?
Action item in July.
Okay, perfect. That's what I
Yes,
thought.
action item, yes.
I don't know if he mentioned this, but were there any changes to this from last year?
Mr. Perez, the question was, are there any substantial changes this year from last year?
No, sir, no major changes. This is just basically updating the route numbers for the most part. Again, no major changes to the areas and or the conditions.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
This is current, this could totally change in, based upon what CDC or TEA comes up with, right? Or whether the route still.
These are students who reside within the 2 miles, but they have to cross a busy or someplace without sidewalks. And so, yeah, this really wouldn't change for us. No, sir. Again, it's assuming, yeah, we have transportation in the way that we have, which we
I'm saying the
use it.
same, but let's just say only half the number of people could be on the bus at one time.
That'll be another issue.
Yeah, this right here doesn't matter for that. It's here's where you reside, here's where the school is, there's a hazardous route in between. If you go there half the number of times or twice a day or whatever, it doesn't matter. You still get the reimbursement for those miles for the
They
children.
still have eligibility for those students to get on the bus, even though they're not the legal mileage away.
It has to be reimbursed for.
Plus, it's reimbursement.
Thank you, Francisco.
Let me ask you, is this,
Oh, sorry.
this just doesn't look familiar. Have we done it this way before? Or
Uh-huh.
this- We have?
Every
Every
I mean, I know we talk about it every year, but I don't know if I've ever seen a resolution or something like that.
Yes.
We've already
Yeah.
signed it, yeah.
All right, cool. Just wondering. Thanks.
Francisco, I'll look forward to seeing you in person too. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And I didn't say that to Mr. Rivera, so I hope he's not offended, but I look forward to
Oh,
seeing him
We will see
too.
all of y'all.
Wait, don't.
No, not all of them.
Amy wants to see all of them, so thank you. Next discussion item is our 2020-21 school year student code of conduct presented by Dr. Lindley.
Good evening, Madam President, Dresbeck, Dr. Ely, members of the board. This is our annual discussion item about the student code of conduct for 2020-2021. No significant changes in the student code of conduct. We have a few small changes based on the legislation that has been enacted in our TASB model code of conduct that came out this session as well. But yeah, this is a discussion item, and we'll be looking for action on it in the July board meeting.
Any questions for Dr. Lindley? All right, next discussion.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Next discussion item is our waiver applications related to COVID-19, presented by Dr. Edwards for our alternative 7th grade reading instrument and our parent notice requirements for students at risk of failure waiver.
Yes, thank you again, President Dreisbeck and members of the board. Tonight we're bringing two additional waivers to you. Throughout our COVID-19 experience, we've been following guidance from the Texas Education Agency on COVID waivers and accommodations to ensure compliance with current practices or exemption from certain requirements. Some of the guidance from TEA is as recent as the end of May, so we continue to get updates on these and we'll continue to monitor those. The two waivers before you were part of it that needed to be reviewed by the District Improvement Committee, not necessarily approved, but reviewed with opportunity for written feedback, which we did on June the 10th. We took that before the District Improvement Committee, and now we will, it's a discussion item that we will plan to bring back to the board for action in July. So the 7th grade reading instrument, again, the Texas Education Code requires each school district to administer at the beginning of the 7th grade year a reading instrument adopted by the commissioner for each student whose performance on 6th grade STAR, which again we didn't have, did not demonstrate reading at the proficient level. Because of the disruptions, districts can request the waiver for another instrument approved by a local school district board of trustees in order to best meet the students' needs in the 2020-2021 school year. What we would like to pursue on that is using what we currently administer, and that is NWEA MAP assessment to monitor those skills and see where students are in regards to that. The second waiver has to do with parent notification requirements for student at risk of failure waiver. Districts are required to provide early notice for students in 4th and 7th grade who identify at risk of failing on the 5th and 8th grade STAR. So that's 4th and 7th grade that we can give early notice to parents that students may be at risk at failing the 5th and 8th grade STAR, which, as a reminder, is SSI, Student Success Initiative, of which they have to pass to be promoted. So again, we didn't have that opportunity in looking at that STAR test, nor did we have an opportunity to look at some of our own end-of-year assessment data. So again, we want to seek a waiver, a one-year waiver, to use our beginning of the year MAP assessment this coming year. Same assessment to be able to identify those students and communicate that to our parents to meet that criteria, and that waiver would allow us to do that. The DIC committee was in favor of those. The feedback for that was positive, and for the most part felt like that was something the district should pursue based on we just don't have the data from those other instruments that are part of the requirement. Be happy to answer any questions.
How early in the new year would you communicate to parents their children may be at risk of failure this next year?
We will typically have a pretty testing window within the first 3 to 4 weeks of school. We're looking at expediting that even earlier this next year if possible. So probably before the 6th week mark for sure, and earlier if possible, to be able to communicate that to parents. Some of that is working that out with those specific assessments.
Are we losing ground by waiting till the fall? I mean, I realize there's nothing we can really do about it, but are we afraid that the problem slipped 4 or 5 months, or?
Well, really, we don't have a choice on when we assess on that because we didn't have those end of the year assessments this last year. Trying to stand that up and do the best we can, and we feel, I mean, those are the assessments that we've chosen as a district. We're not relying on STAR for that. We want to continue to stand those up, assessments that we get to administer, that we have a little bit more control of. Sometimes we have to use the STAR, but this would be a good alternative for us to let us know early in the school year and communicate that out to for those prospective students and parents. It's really the best option we have.
Right.
I mean, there's loss every summer, no matter what we do. Even the standard year, you have loss during the course of the summer. This may be extended more, but we won't know that until we get those assessments in the first part of the year anyway. And we use assessments first part of the year to see what we need to make up for anyway.
Right, these are assessments we would be offering, we typically have 3 of these, beginning of the year, often referred to as BOY, middle of the year, MOY, and EOY for end of year. So these are assessments we would already be administering, so it's not an additional assessment for our kids to take away instructional time, and that's a positive for that as well.
I know there was talk about maybe bringing kids that we know have struggled in the past, bring them in early and do those assessments in August or something like that. Is that still being talked about, or is that just not?
Dr. Edwards?
It is, we're, as mentioned in Dr. Ely's eloquent presentation on where we are and where we are not and where we don't know we are. So all of those things are factoring in on what we would be able to do, trying to stand that up, adjustments to the calendar. There's just so many balls up in the air right now that we don't even, we can't even determine what color they are at this point.
I've had parents come to me and said, with 11 weeks missing in the last school year, are we going to do those assessments early, or how are we going to respond to that? And I basically told them we're still trying to figure that out ourselves. So, but there are people out there wondering how that's going to work. So
we're doing everything we can to do them earlier, and NWA has increased their window. And I talked about that earlier, a month or 2 ago, about if we could do that in the summer. I'd really like to. I don't know if we're going to actually be able to do that. The hurdles may be too high for that, but nevertheless, we're going to move them up as early as possible. And the additional 3 days of instruction at the beginning of the school year only helps us.
I've had parents ask me, what can they do this summer to help their kids catch up? And
well, we have stuff online.
We do. So as we mentioned, we're very, very proud of what we were able to accomplish with our K-5 summer learning camp. We also have, and we've communicated this out, and we will continue to communicate out resources for up to K-8 of online resources that parents can use on above and beyond what they find on their own. We really wanted to communicate these are the things that we feel are appropriate and can support that education. So we already talked about we need to be we sent it out just as school was ending. We're going to plan on continuing to send that out as reminders and updates and things like that. So just that reminder that there are resources that we have put out there that that are free resources or whatever they may be, but that we feel confident that they align. That's an important thing too, that they align with what we feel like is our critical content and those kind of things.
I know Mr. Morath also said TEA has a self-assessment for parents. If they wanted to take advantage of that, is that one of the resources, or is that something totally different?
That is something totally different, and it's pretty intense and exhaustive. That's not one of the resources that we looked at it. We looked at it for our summer learning program, and that is a resource that parents can get to.
Thank you, Dr. Evans. Our next discussion item is Communities and Schools Service Agreement for the 2020-2021 school year, presented by Dr. Edwards and Ms. Gracia.
So Ms. Schertz is available online for questions. Basically, this is a discussion item only, estimated possibly bringing it back in July. It's our annual agreement or contract with Communities and Schools. As we know, they're a strategic partner with us. We utilize their services. They help us with at every campus now. Over the last year, we've divvied some of that up, so they're able to support each of the campuses, at least partially, in our title campuses full term. So this is the contract for site coordinators to partner with educators, students, and parents in identifying the needs of students that are at risk, both from a social emotional setting as well as an academic setting. So again, this is the contract that we bring to the board each year for our partnership with Communities and Schools.
Has that number changed?
It did a little bit. We did have, there was a raise factored into that, as well as an increased cost. We were able to get a discounted rate for an additional coordinator last year, and knowing that we would have to take that cost up this year.
So the FTE position is still there, it's just a little bit more district cost for that position this year.
Includes the raise for them overall and additional cost based upon a non-discounted staff member.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards. Next on the agenda is discussion of board consideration for what's going to be on the consent agenda. And so I would have to ask about the GPS tracking, but everybody else said July for the hazardous bus routing, student code of conduct, our 7th grade reading instrument parent notice, and then our CIS agreement. Is the hazardous, is the school GPS and the charter bus also July?
Yes, there.
Okay. Anybody want those to be pulled from the consent items at this time? Okay, and all can go on there. Thank you. All right. We'll move to action items, and our next action item is actually consent items from last month: approval of minutes, approval of financial statements, acceptance of the superintendent's report on budgeted purchases in excess of $50,000, and approval of TA's innovative courses for special ed students, methodology for academic and personal success, and general employability skills. You're on page 42, and those items are afterwards. Any of those items need to be pulled for discussion? Do I have a motion?
Madam President, I move the Board of Trustees approve the consent agenda items A through D as presented.
I second. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion passes 7-0. All right, we are now on to page 81. And our next action item is consideration of impossible action related to the board resolutions adopted on March 24th, 2020 and April 21st, 2020 related to COVID-19, presented by Dr. Feely.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. What we have here before you, I referenced earlier in my superintendent report, this is action to officially end the resolutions adopted in the March and April regular meetings related to authority granted to the superintendent to undertake certain actions on behalf of the board due to the coronavirus. So those resolutions are listed there, and as I mentioned earlier, we'll do a couple things. While they were already ended because they had an end date on both of those resolutions, so we'll formally do this. It will ratify the two waivers that have already been granted by TEA and you will approve them, even though they've already been granted by TEA, and it will set us back into having business days for calculation, business days for grievances, public information requests, and those types of things. So it's the administration's recommendation that you would approve this action as presented. I'd love to answer any questions you may have.
Except for the two waivers, all this would happen automatically anyway, correct?
Yes, and we did one purchase. We joined the Region 20 Education Service Center Coronavirus Cooperative. And actually, per board policy, that would have shown up as on the greater than $50,000 report on that. So it would have been done in the same fashion.
Well, the only thing, if we had a date certain that delegation would end anyway, so the only thing, if I remember correctly, the only thing we have to ratify would be, and they've already been granted, would be the 2 waivers that were requested and granted. The resolution has already ceased to exist, essentially.
It has, I would classify this as a belt and suspenders approach to this. It is the attorneys saying, you know, yes, it did expire. Just to be on the safe side, we recommend that you just go ahead and have your board take action to officially end it. So we thought, what the harm? What's the harm in that? Okay.
Do I have a motion? Nobody wants to read all that?
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Trustees discontinue the delegation of authority as stated in the board resolution adopted on March 24, 2020, related to COVID-19, reinstate all local policy business day deadlines that were suspended while students were not attending school, and ratify decisions made by the superintendent as authorized by the board resolution, including but not limited to the approval of the following TEA waivers. First one dealing with educator, principal, administrator appraisal, and the second dealing with piece of CPR construction requirements. Further move that the Board of Trustees dissolve the board resolution adopted on April 21, 2020 regarding student instruction during the COVID-19 pandemic, and affirm all modifications contained in said resolution are no longer in effect.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion passes 7-0. We have already done our action item number 2, which passed for our issuance of our refunding bonds. We are on to our next action item, number 3, request for board approval, Texas Education Agency waiver for missed school days and instructional continuity attestation while closed due to COVID-19, presented by Mr. Krupke. Another mouthful.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, President Dreisbach. As you see there, throughout our COVID experience, we've been following guidance from TEA on COVID-19 waivers and accommodations to ensure compliance. This waiver provides with information for the, let me start over there. The missed school day waiver. This missed school day waiver is a 2-step process to be reviewed by District Improvement Committee, which did occur last week, and then to go before the board. This is one of the formal waivers that requires board action. If you go down, I think it's onto the next page is the actual attestation page. So you can see there that during closed but committed to providing instruction, if the education agency is closed, agency will provide missed school day waivers for closed days with the requirement that educational supports for education for all students that were off campus during the closure. The second paragraph there, the district is responsible for providing all necessary educational resources to a student's parent and guardian, and must also provide guidance on how the instruction is to be delivered. And then section 2 is the attestation statement that the district attests that parent and guardians were being provided with the educational resources and implementation assistance necessary to support the instructional program during the COVID-19. This is a step that to be completed and uploaded into the TEA system no later than June 18th. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I move that the Board of Trustees approve filing the TEA missed school day waiver due to COVID-19 closure for the 2019-2020 school year as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion passes 7-0. Our last action item before we go into closed session is a request for board approval, RFP 20-036S, Kitchen Smallwares, presented by Mr. Rivera and Maggie Renee.
Madam President, members of the board, and Dr. Neely, this solicitation to provide unit pricing on a contract for the purchase of small kitchenwares, such as bowls, cutting boards, whips, utensils, knives, for use in child nutrition program at our campuses. This is something that we would do annually. However, this will be as needed. Once we get the unit prices, the actual purchases will be on the actual requirements that we have going into the new year. If you have any questions about the products themselves, I'm sure Mrs. Patel could probably describe what they do.
Mr. President, I move the Board of Trustees approve the recommended vendors' proposed unit pricing for kitchen smallwares from the recommended suppliers listed as per solicitation 20-036S. Funds are available for this purchase under the Child Nutrition Fund.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. All right. The board will now adjourn into closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Section 551-074, authorization to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, or to hear a complaint or charge against an officer or employee. session. At the time is 8:31. The next item on our agenda is request for board action, employment of contractual personnel for school year 2020-2021, presented by Ms. Cannon.
Yes, the positions on the employment list as provided in closed session are replacing positions for the 2020-21 school year and will be funded from the general operating budget.
I move that the Board of Trustees approve the employment list as presented as contractual personnel for the 2020 school year.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion passes 7-0. Next item on the agenda is request for board action, employment of Rose Garden Elementary School principal, presented by Ms. Cannon.
Yes, the position of the Rose Garden Elementary School principal is replacing a budgeted position for the 2020-21 school year and will be funded from the general operating budget.
I move that the Board of Trustees approve the employment of the Rose Garden Elementary School principal for the 2020-21 school year.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion passes 7-0. And that is our last action item. Our last item is a board item for review and discussion is our planning calendar, which not a whole, well, there actually is some things this month, so it's actually a little different. So we have, all of us have our monthly reminders here. The main things that we'll be doing this month is hopefully you can attend graduation, and more details will be coming out from Dr. Ely, so just, or Priscilla will be watching your emails. We also have board training on Wednesday, July the 8th, so if you haven't marked your calendar, that will be a board training. We have our budget workshop that was already mentioned earlier on Tuesday, July 21st, and then the following Tuesday will be our regular board meeting for the month of July, so it'll be a little bit later, and due to just 4th of July and things like that. And then if you're still interested in attending TASB virtually, right now, those that are signed up are myself, Mr. Perkins, Mr. Inman, Mr. Westbrook, and Dr. Ely. So if anybody would like to do that. And then don't forget, we do have 2 more dates available if you have not satisfied the training for human trafficking. I believe that was in House Bill 3, I don't remember when it was.
The bill that is something.
I don't know what House Bill it is. It's one of those House bills that we need to attend. And so Priscilla sent that link. So if you have not checked that, that was in the weekly transmittal. So.
And that's like a Zoom training or webinar?
Yes, it sure is. It's a Zoom
not in
training.
person.
Nope. And then hopefully one day we will be back out of this room. So any other items that need to be, yes?
Yeah, I was just gonna add, I don't know if they sent out a flyer or not, but the applications for Leadership TASB are due July 1st. I don't know if anybody's interested in doing that. I would think probably Jerry or Letitia would be the 2 that would qualify or whatnot. But you guys have any questions about it, or are you even remotely interested? I just thought I'd throw it out there because Robert and I have done it. I think Ed did it at one point. And at one point, we had someone do it pretty much 5 or 6 years in a row. And it was kind of just kind of a thing that if you were going to stick around long enough to participate in that. But is that something you guys are even interested in?
I haven't looked at it.
Yeah.
I kind of looked at it briefly, but I need to look
I
at
think you have to have 36 hours of training before you can apply, so I don't know.
it. Okay.
Are you close to that or no? Okay. Sure, I assume you're past that, right? So, just let me know if you're interested.
I need to look at it too.
Yeah. Robert and I did it. It's a great program. I mean, it's a year long. I'm at probably 4 or 5 meetings throughout the year. So, something like